Hello everyone, my name is Emil. This video is for the LMS 2024 project. In my last video, I kind of gave an overview of the project for people coming to the Google event. In this video, I'm just going to give an overview of the code itself. It's going to be pretty light and minimal, partly because there isn't much code yet, and also because it's going to change a lot over the next few weeks. So let's get started. So here I have the my VS Code. I installed the things like .NET and I think that's it really. .NET, and I have a bunch of extensions, and I cloned the repository. So you'll notice that the stuff here matches up the stuff on here. So we have like a wiki, app-test, and so forth. And we have the same stuff over here. So the code for our project currently lives in the app folder. And that's where you'll see it. It's in C#, and it's a very basic console app. So what I've done is I've written a very basic command line parser thing, and I try to document as much as possible, but I do expect folks to have to kind of figure it out. But hopefully it's not too much to figure out. I have this thing for a command. It's an interface. So my idea is that we'll have different commands. The different commands will implement this interface, and what that means is that they will have these same methods. And yeah, after hopefully with that, things will be nice. And then I have a thing called a DB context. We're using a thing called Entity Framework Core. What that is it's a way to use like SQL and that kind of stuff, database type stuff. So that's what will be like storing data to disk and whatnot. I guess the last thing related to the database, we have a folder within app called models, and that contains like our data models. So part of this is the project uses this practice, I guess, called MVC, or uses ideas from that, I guess. And that stands for Model View Controller. And basically what all MVC is it's a recommendation to like separate your data models from like what the business logic or like what the app logic is from the presentation of it, or like the view. So if you think of like a website, it's a classic example, and MVC is often used with websites today. You will have in your code, you will have the view. That's usually like the web page, like the raw HTML. With newer stuff, that's going to be the view. And then on your server, like your backend, you'll have the view, the controller. The controller will be like receiving stuff from like web browsers and doing stuff with that. And then you'll have your models, which are basically like the objects. So for example, if you had Facebook, when you go to facebook.com, you, like the person visiting Facebook, your browser will show the view, right? It'll show like, please log in, or like, here's your feed or whatever. And that's the view. And then when you do stuff on Facebook, like say you create a post, you click a button, that button will be on the view, but it'll basically send a command, so to speak, to the controller and be like, hey, I want to create this post. The controller will receive like what you want as your post data. It might do some like validations. So one of the things it will always do would be like, hey, are you actually logged in? Like, are you authenticated? It'll check your post. Maybe there's like a maximum character limit or something on your post, or that kind of stuff. I guess these days they'll probably do stuff like, make sure your post doesn't contain like hate speech or whatever. And then it'll end up creating your post, and your post, it would be a model. So it's kind of like a noun, like an object in your software. So same thing here. We have models. So this is a learning management system, and for right now, we're wanting it's student focused for now, and so it's kind of basically just like a to-do app right now. So you can create work items, you can create like log progress against those work items, and then you can log like what's blocking you from completing your work items. Yeah, so that's a long-winded explanation, but it is why we like separate the stuff, because down the road we do want to make this into a web app. So my forward thinking was saying, well, let's kind of use good practices now so that we're not like rewriting stuff down the road. So yeah. So for right now, what's actually implemented is just like a credits screen. It's actually changed since I've last looked at this because more people have added their names to the credits. So I can go to my like terminal. I think I can also go to like the run section. It might actually be harder because I need command line arguments. So let's do it from the terminal. So I'll go into terminal, new terminal, and then I want to go to the app folder, which I can do with like cd, so cd app. And then you can see like in my thing here it says /app, and this command should work for Mac, for Linux, and probably for Windows. If it doesn't work for Windows, it's you might want to use a thing called dir app. So it'd be like dir app. Oh, hey, is that? I guess that works in. Oh, maybe it's not dir. You know what? I think actually CD app would be the thing to use for everyone. My mistake. So CD app should work for everyone. And then afterwards, you want to write in .net run. So that basically says to run the project. I just try that by itself. Not much is going to happen. It's going to spit out an error. And it says invalid noun. So what does that mean? Well, that's actually a error that we've written in here. If I just search for invalid noun, you can see where it's saying, oh, console.writeLine invalid noun. And that's because the way to use this app, at least in the current design, is to use like a noun and then a verb after you try to run it. So instead of .net run by itself, the only thing you can do right now is to look at the credits. So you can do .net run credits list, and that should print off all the credits. 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah. So that's basically the extent of the functionality. Later on, we might do something like .net run work item create, and then extra arguments afterwards. But that's work to be done this week. And this pattern of like a noun and a verb, it's basically the kind of standard way that console apps work these days. So, for example, I had mentioned in the last video that there's this thing called the GitHub CLI, and I have that. So in the GitHub CLI, they use the exact same idea. So if I do GH, which is for the GitHub CLI, and then I do issue list, it lists all of the issues on this repo. I could do GH repo list, and these are all my repositories. What else could I do? GH, oh, PR list. This is all the pull requests that are active. So yeah, so the same concept. Another tool that I use a lot is this thing called Incus. Incus it's like Hyper-V or VMware, that kind of stuff. So it's a way to manage virtual machines. So Incus has the same, or LXC, they're kind of sister projects. It has the same kind of syntax. So I could do Incus. It just says Incus list, I think. And then that I have one VM right now that's running called CA. But I could do like Incus storage list, and it shows me like the different storage drivers that I have, or that kind of stuff. So this project's going to use the same idea of like the app name itself. And in this case, we use .NET Run because that's like how to run the project like from code. But eventually, or actually not eventually, right now, we do have a thing for the releases where you could download, like I could download the Linux 64-bit thing and then open it. And so this is a automation pipeline we have that builds our product or thing. And if I scroll down somewhere, there should be just a thing called LMS. Yeah. Oh, let me see if I can actually, I should be able to just extract this and run. We'll see. I haven't actually tried this. I'll just call this LMS. Files. Then if I go to my downloads, should be an LMS folder. Oops, I just want to have a terminal in here. Open a terminal here. Oh, it's small for some reason. I should be able to just run LMS credits list. Oh, it's not an executable file. Well, I'll just make it an executable file. There we go. I do have to fix that. But yeah, you can see here, I just ran LMS credits list. You notice it's a lot faster this time, and everything was good with that. So that's how this project is going to be. Now let's actually go back to the code because that's what's the point of this video. So how are we going to like implement this like noun verb pattern? That's where this command kind of interface comes in. So let's look at the credits like module. So we have credits. The credits can technically, access the database, but it doesn't need it for right now. And what you can see is that, remember I said in this command interface that all of the commands will have these functions. So it's get help with the verb, and then execute. That's what we have here. So when we call the execute function, we can give it a verb. For right now, it should only be list. And if so, it'll display the credits. Or otherwise, it'll throw an exception. So when you go back to the main program, so this is the program.cs is like how the program starts. We first parse our arguments. These are like our command line arguments that we provide in. Um, we do a little check to see if the noun or the verb is invalid. That is handled from this. So basically, we'll have a list of nouns here. So right now, the only nouns that you have is credits, and the only verb you have is list. But that will change with this week. But in the normal case, you'll get down to here, and you'll go to the credits. We'll initialize a credits kind of module. We'll execute the verb, and then we return 200. That's the return part is like the status code of the application. So every time you run an application, when it exits, it sets this thing called the exit code, which that's like a very not archaic, but very legacy system. So for right now, I've made our exit codes like HTTP codes, which I don't know anyone who does that. But that's just why it says 200 okay. And if you think, oh, 200 okay sounds familiar, it's because that's how the web works. So when I make a request to Google, and then Google gives back the web page for whatever, it tells my browser 200 okay, or just 200, to signify to the browser that like, hey, you sent the right data and I was happy and everything's good. So that's how that's going to work. And you saw in here we have that execute function in the interface. And when we go to the credits, you can see that it has the class for credits has a semicolon and then this I command, which is that. So basically, when we have this, it's object-oriented programming, and it's inherits the I command interface. So what this means is that C# will make sure that all of the functions are present. So if I delete this, for example, and we go up here, you got the red squigglies, and if I put my mouse over it, it says that it does not implement the interface, whatever. So that is helpful. That's helpful for us because it's saying, hey, you want to make this a command, but it's not doing the things that you said commands do, which is execute. So what's up with that, right? So it's a good way to check. So what this means is we have a credits module. When people do the work item and progress and block stuff, I'm hoping those are going to become their own modules. So people will create a file. I can kind of quickly demo. People create a file. Maybe it's work item.cs, and then it'll be like class work item. My computer's very slow for some reason. And then it'll be this I command business. There we go. And then GitHub Copilot's wanting to do stuff for me. And then yeah, when I do this, because it is empty, it's going to say, hey, like it doesn't implement the get help with the verb or the execute. Like what's going on there? So yeah, so that's a hope for this week. I didn't explicitly tell people to do that, so we'll see. Like, yeah, partly it is a lot of time to like write documentation for all the issues and whatnot. But the other thought I was having is that I do kind of just want to expect people to get work done, and then next week we can kind of go back. So I'm thinking next week is going to be like a refactoring week, meaning that it's a week where we kind of put the brakes a bit on terms of like new features, and we go back to our existing code and say like, hey, how can we make it better? And sometimes we see ways for improvement after we do the work. So we'll do a little bit of work, especially with stuff like, a work item and then a progress and whatever. Those are like somewhat related to each other. So sometimes it's just nice to get a thing out onto the code. and then look back at it at a high level and be like, hey, like where are the similarities and that kind of stuff. Um, but yeah, hopefully that makes sense. Definitely reach out if you have any questions. My hope is that people will just create a new command type thing. They'll implement this iCommand interface, and then C# will kind of guide you on the way to doing things correctly. The last bit I will talk about is the app-test project. So this project is a test project. So in C#, they want you to separate your tests in a different like folder basically than your code. And so we have tests for the project. And for some reason it's, oh yeah, I accidentally pasted that there. So here we have our tests. So you can see we have one for credits tests, and you can see that it just runs through. It does have very basic tests. So here we're just looking at this function to get credits, and then we're getting the type of the thing. We're just making sure, hey, it should be an array of strings, which it is. Next, we'll test the length of the credits. So as people complete their credits ticket, they should be changing this, increment it by 1, and that kind of stuff. And then this is the one for the actual content. So for each of the items in credits, we expect, Emil Harvey and so forth. So yeah, so that's a credits test. The only other ones that I have is a command line parser test. So this is very basic. Actually think there's a few holes in it because I was very rushed when writing this. But same thing there. So this just does a basic. It's mostly for myself actually. Just some basic checks on how the the command line parser works. And then I have one for the DB tests. As you notice, I created models for the work item progress and stuff. There's no actual like business code for it, but that doesn't mean that I can't test it, the DB part. So I kind of basically I create a new item, I save it, and I just make sure that it has an ID that's not 0. And yeah, probably there should be more tests here, but I can get to that later. And for the most part, I do expect to have the like data models be handled by myself before people start working on it. We'll see how like the next coming weeks go. From my side, like my uncertainty is how comfortable people are with that kind of stuff. It depending on how this week goes, if people are very comfortable with the code and stuff, then maybe I'll start doing less work for the data models and stuff. Or if people are struggling a lot, maybe I'll kind of reshift our focus. The main idea here is that the direction of the project is going to be governed by you guys, or you folks. So that's that. So don't feel like this is how the work's going to be divided all the time. If you're wanting to do more work, or you're feeling a little uncomfortable with what's being asked, then please let me know and I will try to adjust. That said, my general bias or inkling is to be more inclusive than not. So I do somewhat expect a diversity in people's experience levels. So I try to cater towards people who are generally less experienced, just so that like nobody's feeling excluded. But there's a lot of decisions to make. So maybe there'll be a way to include everyone of all skill levels. However, I'm not going to cater towards somebody who's very experienced at the expense of someone who's less. So yeah, that is the code. As people complete their code, I'm going to ask them to write tests. I'm happy to write tests for them. Again, it's that discussion of how comfortable people are. I do think tests are fairly straightforward to write. So for now, I'm gonna be kind of encouraging, I guess, for people to write tests. But again, let's just see how that goes. And with any bit of this code, please reach out on Slack if you're having trouble, and I'll do my best job to accommodate. Or please also message in like the channels and not just in a DM, and that way other people can participate too and help you out. And with that, I'll end this video. I think that's the only two that I'll be doing today. But yeah, hope this was helpful. And see you at Slack.